Betmaker Show. This is the NFL offseason team opportunities missed analysis and preview for Friday, June 5th, 2020. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, we're ready to roll, talking some football. The NFL has really just soldiered on. Business, not as usual, but in terms of the calendar year, accomplishing, for the most part, what they need to accomplish. Brian Blessing, Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. We're in Las Vegas here to talk about it. And I guess, Bruce, we're sitting here. We see the stadium being built in Las Vegas, and we watch that thing rolling up. We don't know about football with fans, at least as of today. But the NFL gets the word out, to all the teams. Training camps, you're going to have to do it at basically your own home facilities. That maybe was the big thing instead of, a lot of these teams that travel to the certain locations that they do on an annual basis. Everything's going to be housed at their facilities.
Yeah, and, we've gotten a preseason schedule in late May, too, and it looks like, they're proceeding along the way with that, although there's still changes and adjustments they can make, Brian, along the way. One of them, obviously, that wasn't a surprise, as you mentioned, about the training camp thing. Preseason, it's a little bit sooner in the calendar here than the regular season, so you're talking August, and where we're going to be in August, that's still a couple of months away. But people in stadiums and things, that's still to be determined. Also, new stadium in Las Vegas is ready to go, it looks like. Also, the one in Inglewood, where the Rams and Chargers are going to play, which you could almost see from Las Vegas. It's such a big thing. But there's still some questions about California and getting, sizes of people who can congregate and things like that, and how this works out for the Rams and Chargers. Chargers in particular, who don't really have a fan base anyway, and they're moving into this stadium that's about 3 times bigger than the one they've been playing at in Carson the last couple of years. So we'll see how this all develops. But we're getting more news and more developments as each week, and here we are at the end of early June. By the end of June, I think that some of the stuff will be becoming much more clear. At least we hope so. Bruce,
it's to the point where you've been hit over the head with all the things that have been going on. Which focus on the football side of things, and without going down the rabbit hole, off-season developments and things that we're talking about. What's going on the field? On the field, the Drew Brees situation in New Orleans. We'll see how time heals all wounds. But you sit back and you wonder, what goes on there. You bring Jameis Winston in, and they're sitting there saying, "Oh, they had the quarterback in waiting," at least as far as Peyton was concerned with Taysom Hill. But the Saints bear watching here, from a football team perspective.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they're still one of the favorites coming into this year. We'll see how this Brees thing plays out. It seems like something tells you it might not blow over that easily. It won't be allowed to blow over that easily. How it affects them internally, I'm not sure. Brees, anyway, the people talking to down there, even before this past week, a lot of people down there thought this would be Brees' last year anyway. He apparently had something lined up with NBC. We'll see if that's still in play here. He'd be really good on TV, I think. But apparently he had that to slide right into. So the consensus thought among most people down there was that this is probably going to be Brees' last year anyway. So quickly down the road, they did bring Jameis Winston in. In Winston's best-case scenario, he gets a chance to play this year, and Brees got hurt last year for a bit. That allowed Teddy Bridgewater to step in. He looked good, parlayed that into a really nice deal with the Panthers. In Jameis Winston's case, his connections would be thrilled if a similar thing happened and he had a chance to go back on the market. He only signed a 1-year deal. But I don't think he's beyond reclamation yet. It kind of went sideways for him in Tampa Bay last year, but there's still enough people in the league who think he might be worth a look down the road if he can eradicate some of the mistakes and things like that. But nonetheless, the Saints are a team to watch, and but monitor this stuff because you don't. It's a very fragile the psyche of a team and how they respond to different things. And if things go bad, do they keep going bad or can they turn things around? they bear watching because they're good, but there are these other factors there that you have to watch at the same time.
All right, speaking of factors for teams in the offseason, to at least from an idea perspective, to give credit where credit is due, something you spotted on ESPN.com, and it's worthy of talking about, teams that had done well in the offseason and some of the big stories of teams that maybe really just swung and missed in the offseason. And pretty much at the top of the list, you keep wondering, is there a plan B? Or, Cam Newton's out there. I mean, you can almost combine the two with the Patriots. Are they going to go with Stidham and Brian Hoyer, or is there a Cam Newton opportunity there? Or possibly, is there a trade at some point? But the Patriots, life after Tom Brady, going with an unproven commodity.
Yeah, Brian, you're right. And I think any of those scenarios could perhaps come into play. And I think in a normal offseason, a normal summer leading up into preseason, this would sort of be an important preseason for Bill Belichick to kind of see what he's got there at quarterback and to get a better feel for Stidham in his first real chance. And, Cam is out there. There's trades. I mean, things can happen. Now, Belichick has been with the Patriots 20 years now. He does know, his old mentor, Bill Parcells, used the 2006 preseason as really the audition for Tony Romo to get that job from Drew Bledsoe. And he threw Romo right out there at the start of preseason, let him go the whole way in the first preseason game, and used August as sort of to get a feel, am I really ready to go with this guy? I've got Bledsoe behind here if I have to. They ended up going with Romo. They used August as sort of as the tryout. You wonder about that with the Patriots, and if Belichick is going to have to let Stidham play a lot in August, not like a normal starting quarterback who might get one quarter at most or one series at most in the first one or two preseason games. He's got to let Stidham play. At the moment, I think Cam is a backup alternative for Belichick. He'd like to make it work with Stidham, and there's possible trades too. And things do happen. Quarterbacks can get hurt in the summer. We've seen this on a few occasions in recent years. And the market all of a sudden can change, and there might be a quarterback available out there. I guess in a total emergency, they've still got Brian Hoyer, and maybe they could go to war with him. Hoyer's played some in the past, so, I mean, he's not the worst emergency alternative. But my bigger question with the Patriots, at the end of last season, Brian, even with Tom Brady there, his numbers were the worst since his rookie year last season, and that offense was broken by the end of the year. They weren't really doing it, and can this defense continue to carry them? It is Belichick, but by the end of last season, the Patriots were on fumes, and they looked to be in trouble on the way down anyway. If Brady stayed there, we'll see. This is a very intriguing situation up in Foxborough.
Well, the world at times, Bruce, now seems to be spinning backwards. They should just trade for Ryan Fitzpatrick and go win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably out there as a scenario. And now that you mentioned that, there is one other quarterback there. You mentioned Fitzpatrick, who is down in Miami, and that's Josh Rosen, who's sort of the forgotten guy. And if Miami moves him, he'd be on his third team in as many years in the NFL, fourth team in four if you count his last year at UCLA. But he was a guy who was rumored to be on Belichick's radar before. Keep an eye on that name. Josh Rosen could be a guy. I think Miami would like to keep Fitzpatrick as sort of to help ease Tua into the role, and Rosen's sort of the odd guy out. That's a name I would watch here too. We talk about Cam a lot and some others. Josh Rosen's a guy who could perhaps end up in New England as well. Keep an eye on that situation too.
What is it specifically, Bruce, about Cam Newton that, I mean, he's still out there. I mean, he can kind of pick where he goes to a degree if there's a level of interest, but it seems like that's awfully, awfully quiet. I don't know. What do you make of the Cam Newton situation?
I think this was an unfortunate season for Cam to come to hit the market like this because of the physical concerns that teams have with him. And the normal sorts of medical things that you would have that he'd have to clear, and he has done some of that with his own doctors, but the teams haven't really been able to send their guys out and check him out as normal. So I think timing wise, it was just sort of hard for a quarterback like that to hit the market with those sort of question marks physically. Now, so I think with him, it's more to do with that. Now, Cam is flamboyant, and he, kind of a diva, but you've never gotten the impression that he is a distraction, though, in whatever he wears in the post game, the loud outfits he wears. But internally, he doesn't, no problems with him. He's pretty popular amongst his teammates. So I don't know that he's really an internal distraction. It's more, like a peacock sort of with him, the way he dresses and all that. So I don't think that's as much of a concern. I do think the physical stuff is, and the fact that he certainly gives the impression that he's damaged goods right now. He's had several injuries in recent years, some of them rather serious. He hasn't been able to stay on the field, and he has had to change his style a little bit. I mean, if it's the Cam of 2015 when he was the MVP of the league, it's a different story, but he's not physically that guy anymore. And I think the durability thing is a big question with him, and it's just sort of the way the market evolved this year, and teams that you thought might be willing to take a one-year stab at him opted. Chargers are one, Jacksonville another that opted to do something else. That could still change, but I think just factors conspired against Cam. This is a bad season for a guy like him to hit the market in the offseason.
Let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Well, speaking of a guy that can't stay on the field, and when he's on the field and beyond noticeable and a difference maker, but Jadeveon Clowney's still out there.
That one surprises me because he's had, some injury stuff, but he's obviously an impact edge rusher, and those guys are in small supply. And you would think where he came from, where he ended up last year was Seattle, which still has a crying need to upgrade its pass rush, that maybe, he would stay put and re-sign in Seattle. That could still happen. His numbers didn't seem as great last year, but when Clowney played with Seattle, I mean, he was generating a lot of attention from the opposing teams who were really ganging up on him to neutralize him somewhat. But the fact he can tie up a couple of players at once is another testament to his value. Having said that, I think, he's still kind of the biggest prize out here, and he might be selective. I get the feeling he thinks the Seahawks are sort of a fallback for him now, and he tried to see where else he can go, and he probably got some interest, but he didn't want to take the bait, either whether it's money-wise or whatever, situation-wise. There are a couple of teams that have come into the focus now who have some more cap room based upon guys they've recently released who could get involved in the Jadeveon Clowney sweepstakes. The Jets are one of those. And they apparently have the money, and it's appearing like, from what I'm hearing, the Jets may make a run at Clowney sometime here in the summer. Does he want to go there? We'll see. He will end up somewhere, but this has turned into one of the more intriguing things of the offseason. I still think there's a 50-50 chance he ends up back in Seattle, but we'll see how that goes.
The funny thing is, when you talk about a guy, and is a player, does he have value in relation to the point spread? And other than the quarterback, minimal guys that would have that kind of impact. But I would say this to you, maybe not in terms of the side, but from a total perspective. You go to Seattle, you look at the last 5 games last year, they allowed 26, 27, 24, 28, and 30 points. And if Clowney's not there with them, I could see these guys just being a dead over team, and if Wilson stays healthy.
Yeah, and their pass rush was anemic last year at best, even with Clowney there. So you would figure without him it could be a problem, and that's with him tying up multiples of blockers and things. they got involved in a couple of crazy games there. That second game against the 49ers was kind of wild right at the end. But to me, just my view of Seattle is they're really precariously perched here. They had a lot of running back injuries last year. Now they had to go get Marshawn Lynch off of pull him out of retirement to come back in last year, and even Arnold Turbin came back from the Super Bowl years. But this is Russell Wilson keeping this thing afloat, and I'm just not sure how long he can patch that thing. There are some holes there that I think Wilson has camouflaged because he's so good overall, keeping this team competitive. But the defense isn't quite what it was, and you'd figure that, even though they've made some adjustments in the offseason here, it looks like they still have a hole on the defensive front getting to the quarterback. And it would seem to me like they would really need to get Clowney in there if they can, which is why I still think that might happen. But make no mistake, that's Russell Wilson's team. He's out of there. That team drops from playoff contention like a rock. So keep that in mind with the Seahawks.
And one of the main things that we're going to be watching closely is going to be that aspect of, and it seems, Bruce, like we're turning a corner here. How did the NBA return, the NHL return, not happening, but it seems like I think we're turning a corner. The next 2 weeks will tell a lot. Will there be a spike after all the protesting that's gone on? I think fans at football games, I would think, are a realistic possibility.
Yeah, it is. And, in most of even at reduced capacities in stadiums, that's better than nothing. And a lot of teams right now, I think that's sort of the plan at the moment, is they'd start off with fewer people in the stands and see how that works. Again, though, this is sort of state by state and even city by city, because there's going to be some different guidelines and parameters in California. I mean, we've got, you've got 3 teams there, and, they're all dealing with some different parameters than somewhere else about getting people together. But it does seem like things are heading on the upswing here again. The public wants it to. Certainly the sporting public wants it to. So, I mean, they're looking for any good news they can. I think that's very important. The sentiment out there is overwhelming. Let's try to get this back if we can. And I think that helps, as opposed to there being, a sentiment out there not to get it back. It's completely the opposite with sports. And I think that will help get this thing back to normal as soon as possible.
And again, just keeping this a sports thing. But the one thing I would say in relation to, okay, how does this impact sports? We went through this media-driven narrative, and, whoever you watch, whatever you think, God bless every one of you out there. But this thing where, 400 people in a pool, these people were castigated as complete fools, and then the protests happen, and for 6 days, okay, we've got the protest, and nobody says, well, wait a second, and they're screaming in each other's face, to then turn back with this narrative that we've got we just went through 9 weeks of sitting home doing nothing, and now I don't know how they could possibly go back to that narrative that we got to lock it down and shut it down again. And hopefully, I think medically, treatments and whatever, and the summer and the heat maybe knocking this thing down a peg, that we're hoping this thing's run its course. But it would just seem like all of a sudden, what pandemic? And all of a sudden at the NHL just recently, like out of nowhere, it sounded like it was going to be a little further down the road. But Monday, they say, okay, phase 2, you can start working out in your home rinks. It's almost like, because of what we've just been watching for the last 7-8 days, the sport teams are saying, well, hell, let's go.
Yeah, and that's sort of society in general is ready to do that. And it's going to be harder and harder, even if they want to impose some lockdowns again. I don't want to get straight too far away, but I mean, the masses will kind of dictate where this wants to go. And I think we've done that. And now, trying to get back to normal as much as possible. And, we will see. Remember, I mean, a lot of people who have been out of work too have still been getting paid here. And that has kind of helped things a little bit, but it's not like being back at normal. And I think that's what people want. Now they get a little taste of it. It's going to be hard to put that genie back in the bottle no matter what, I think. And sport has a really important role. I don't want to overstate it, but
no, it does.
It's therapeutic, and it conveys a sense of normalcy that not just joy for people, enjoyment, but normalcy, and that's what people really crave right now. That's why the NFL draft had the ratings like it did, because it was the only thing on, but I mean, it made people feel sort of like a normal late April, what they do. And I think sport can do that when it comes back.
You know, that word normalcy, I'm not shooting at you, but that's, you know, this word, what will normal be? But to that end, Thursday, sports books and casinos, a good share of them, not all, reopened the doors here in Las Vegas Thursday, and you had these big questions, Bruce. Well, how will that play out? And all these places that were opening their door at midnight, there were streams of people just ready to get in there and get back at it. So, I mean, if you're looking for a positive sign, that would be it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start somewhere, and they got to start slow, and even if no game, and a lot of people who like locals who like to go there got a chance to go back in. You know, some of these states that have recently adopted sports gaming but haven't yet figured out how to do it with the mobile app, those states, the sports gaming revenue dried up almost completely, and to get open even for betting on future games, things like that, is very important for some of those states with the books that don't have mobile apps. And Vegas, man, had to start to somewhere. I don't think people are coming in here visiting yet, and that'll be a while before that comes, but you got to start somewhere. And at least they're kind of back on the slow track, but that can pick up speed as we get through the summer.
All right, bud. It's always a fun conversation, and slowly but surely news coming out, sports coming back. And, football's the 800-pound gorilla, and I think is the one that will officially, when it's all said and done, if we get some of these sports completing their seasons, but the one that's going to tell the tale about what it's going to be like for us moving forward. We don't know about college football, but the NFL is going to be that monster that tells the tale.
And the NFL is actually, what little it's been able to do in the offseason has been a big help to, I think, the sports fans and society in general. Something that seems a little normal, at least most of the NFL offseason, has reminded people that of some normalcy there. So hopefully that can pick up into the fall.
Outstanding stuff. Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. I'm Brian Blessing, and we are getting the countdown on for training camps and an eye on the future for the NFL.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.